Hello everyone, welcome back to Spurs from the Stands. I'm Sarah and today we're going to be dissecting some more information, and in this video I want to talk about something a little bit different that maybe we haven't spoken about yet. Obviously we spoke about the board, we spoke about the footballing side a little bit, we've spoken about the general feeling around Tottenham Hotspur, and obviously the headlines at the moment are magnifying on our manager Thomas Frank, and the conversation, even though we won last night, is still very much around whether the football is any good, whether we're enjoying the football, whether the manager should be sacked. And there's so much context around all of this conversation that I want to cover in this video, talking about our form, our injuries, the atmosphere, the tactics. There's so much that I want to cover, just to give rise to maybe a different perspective that people are talking about. Now, just to say, if you're seeing us for the first time, hello, welcome to the channel, welcome to the Spurs family. Please do like, subscribe, comment, share, all of those things. That would be greatly appreciated if you support the channel. And I hope you stick around and you enjoy this video. If you don't enjoy this type of content, I've made a few playlists now that some of you have already seen. So I've made some playlists which break down like the previews of the games, going to the actual games. I don't think we've actually had an away game since I started doing this channel, so it just shows you how new we really are. So even in 2 weeks, we haven't had an away game that I've had to cover yet. I can feel that you're all Spurs fans, because I can feel your impatience jumping out of me in the comments, which is great to see because you're enthusiastic as I am. But yeah, I've had some suggestions to go on fan shows, to go live as well. You know, my trusty mug here to get some kind of THFC branding on it. So there's been loads of suggestions, but we walk before we can run, okay? Progress over perfection every time. And if that doesn't apply to Tottenham Hotspur, it definitely applies to this channel right here. So please, I appreciate your patience. I appreciate all the love and support. All of those things are coming. That is guaranteed. But you're going to have to be a little bit patient on that one because we have loads of juicy stuff coming up. So yeah, hopefully I can keep up this momentum as well, because a lot of you are saying I'm very positive. I am generally a positive person. It's the way that I choose to look at life. And especially when it comes to football and supporting a team like Spurs, you know, you have to learn how to deal with these situations. And some of you are saying, Sarah, how are you so positive? I've been a Spurs fan all of my life, so I am very well versed in what it means to be Spursy, in what it means to back the team when we're going through tough times, to enjoy the high times. And it's who we are, mate, isn't it? So we've got to embrace it. But all of that aside, and there's probably some other stuff that's going to come to me. Someone called this spontaneous broadcasting in the comments, which I think was a great turn of phrase. So thanks for that. Maybe this is what it is, but I just kind of go into this flow state and, you know, share ideas that come to my mind. So something that's been on my mind in the last week, not even week, literally since that West Ham game, has been this whole conversation around sacking our manager. And I'm very well aware that when you live in these ecosystems and these echo chambers, you can be pulled into the conversations around sacking the manager without an objective view. So I want to take that objective view today. And for those of you who are firmly Frank out and it doesn't matter what I say, that's fine. You can move on. You can move on. I love you, but you can move on, because look, we have to be realistic. You have to look at all situations, because when you make a big decision and an expensive decision that's going to cost you tens of millions to sack someone, you know, you have to not let your emotion overtake the reaction. You know, you have to be able to look at things through a different lens and think to yourself, you know, why is this happening? Is there a way that we can fix this without changing our manager? Because one thing that we know to be true is we have had 15 managers in 25 years. 15 managers in 25 years. That is crazy. And I think the Spurs' default mentality when things aren't working out is, rather than fix them from the inside, is to use the manager as the scapegoat to get him out the club. And that prevents us, that changes the direction of the club. It means that the club don't then reinvest into the squad. And it means we are so stretched. And that is why we are seeing so many injuries. That's why we're seeing this cycle that's playing out. And today I want to talk about all of that in a bit more detail. So I want to run the tapes back for you to, pretty much 2010. 2010-11 season, which was the first season we got into the Champions League for the very first time. Now, there is a lot of context around this, in the sense that a lot has changed in the last 15 years. What's also true is we've moved home. We've got a new home. And you know what it's like when you move home. You're sitting there and you need new furniture because your old furniture doesn't fit your new home. And that is very much where Spurs are at the moment. So if we rewind all the way back to 2010, that was the first time we got into Champions League, into European football. And that was a period under Harry Redknapp, and there was a lot of stability in the squad. It was in our old ground. And so, you know, we'd built up to that point over a very long period of time. Probably, we finished 11th in the 2007-8 season, but for sort of the 3-4 years before that, we were building and strengthening the squad. Now, come to 2016-17, that was the season we finished second in the table, and that was the last season that was played in the old stadium. So that is the highest position we have reached in the Premier League, probably ever, I'm pretty sure. And that was the last season. So you can see how the last season we had in our old stadium, you could probably see that, or you could make the objective assessment when we're looking at this through a long period of time, because we can look game by game and we can analyze things game by game, but there's so many nuances that happen and so many tweaks and changes when you're a new manager to try and get things to click and trying to figure out who your core team are, that it takes a while to do that. So that's why I'm running this back so far. So 2016 to 2017, that was the season we finished highest in the Premier League under Pochettino. Fantastic team. We all know Kane, Son, amazing players, right? And after that, 2017, 2018, we move into Wembley. So we play those two seasons at Wembley Stadium. And in those two successive seasons, we finish third and fourth. Now, we move back into the Spurs Stadium or the brand new stadium, should I say, in the 2019-2020 season when we finished sixth. So our first season in the new stadium was that 2019-2020 season. And the season before that, as we all famously know, is when we finished we lost out, but we got to the final in the Champions League. And this is all very relevant. So 2018-19, we played those last few games is when we moved into the new Spurs Stadium. Momentum's behind us. We get to the final, and unfortunately, we lose out, and we all know how that went. The season after was 19-20 season. We finished sixth. And we all know what happens in 2020-2021 season when we finished seventh, because COVID hit. And I think, and I can't actually remember, because a lot of those games were played behind closed doors. However, based on what I was looking up before, the first game back was played in August 2021 after COVID. So that would have been the 21-22 season. And in that 21-22 season, when we came back after COVID, we finished 4th. Now, because the season before that, so the 2021 season, we were in the Conference League and we finished 7th. In that 2021 season, should I say? Sorry, I'm going to be messing this up because there's a lot of stats and numbers that I want to get through. But we weren't in any European football that season. So the season we finished 4th in 21-22, and this goes back way before Ange. When we finished 4th under Conte, that season we had no European football. The season before we had Conference League, and those two competitions we finished 7th. Okay, coming Conte, we finished 4th. We go back into European football. We have a lot of drama that happens behind the scenes. Conte goes, Mason comes in, we finish 8th. So again, no European football. Everything's in disarray. Stellini comes in. It's a little bit chaotic. We have loads of team movement. Kane leaves us and Ange comes in. Ange comes in the 23-24 season and we finish 5th with no European football. You can see a pattern starting to emerge already going back to the 2020 season. So this goes all the way back to that period when we've had this transition from old stadium into Wembley, into the new stadium, played a fantastic season. Then we have COVID. Then we get into European football. Then we finish lower in the table. Then we get into European football. And then we finish lower in the table. And then we have no European football. And we finish higher in the table. Do you see a pattern here? So we get into European football under Ange. We finish 5th. That's progress because Kane's left us. And we're going through a rebuilding phase. But, of course, we all know last season we won the trophy of the European Cup, but we finish 17th. And that then leads us to this season where we're playing again in a second competition. We don't have any of the cups going anymore, but we're not in any of the cups, should I say. But our Premier League form is suffering. So I guess the point that I'm making when we look high level and we look back at all of our league positions and our finishes in combination with when we have a second game a week, it clearly shows that we cannot keep up with the league when this happens. Now, this is not an anomaly. This is not an anomaly. We have seen this happen with other teams. We've seen it happen with Newcastle. We've seen it happen with Palace. We've seen it happen with Aston Villa. We've seen it happen with lots of other teams. We've even seen it happen with Man United. We've seen this happen with other teams. And unless you have squad depth, it's very, very hard to push on and get top 4 football whilst you're already top 4 and get that European football whilst you're already in a European competition. So when we talk about this notion of competing across all fronts, what does that look like? How do we actually get ourselves there? Because at the moment, we can't do both. We're burning the candle at both ends. And that is what Andrew was trying to point out last season. He was showing us that when you put your mind to something, when you have such conviction that you can achieve something, it's going to take sacrifices. And in that case, the sacrifice was the league. And so what's happened is we've ended up in this cycle. And so it might not surprise you to know, if we level this down, that the last two back-to-back games that we won this season. So we had Brentford, who we beat 2-0 in December, and then we beat Slavia Prague in the Champions League. But before that, the last 2 Premier League games we won back-to-back was our first 2 games of the season, which were Tottenham at home against Burnley and City away. And for those 2 games, we had 1 whole week off. There was no midweek game when we won 2 Premier League games back to back. Other than that, this season, we've won games back to back, but they haven't both been in the Premier League. Right? So this is a very important thing to note. Because when we go even further back, the last 2 games, and when I say 2 games, I'm not talking about a run of 3 games. I'm talking about 2 games, just back-to-back wins. Forget the run. We're talking about back-to-back games. The last time that happened before the first 2 games of this season was February 2025, when we beat Man United 1-0, and then we went away to Ipswich and won 4-1. And what do you know? The game after that was against Man City at home, and that was the game where I'm pretty sure Sonny missed a sitter of a goal, and there was loads of controversy. But again, those 2 games, there was 1 week free in between those. That was the knockout stages. That's when the knockout stage games were being played last year. So you can see a pattern here. Before that, we did have back-to-back wins again. And what do you know? The team we beat in the Prem, off the back of beating Elfsborg, was Brentford. It's funny because every time I look at these stats, Brentford always seems to be the team that we beat. Whether it's before the European game or after the European game, it's Brentford. So they seem to be the team. Anyway, now that was the last time we won 2 games back to back. To look at a run of games where we won 3. No, that's not true. Okay, so to go back, we had a run of 5 games on the bounce which we won, and that was under Ange in September 24. So that would have been the start of last season. Okay, and that was when we played Coventry in the Cup. We beat Brentford. We had a European game against Karabag. We beat a very poor Man United side, and then we beat Ferencváros, which is funny because Bissouma was in that squad. But keep in mind, we had Sonny then, so the team did look slightly different. Now, if you notice about that, we won 2 Premier League games back to back, but not 3. So the game after Ferencváros was Brighton, and we got beaten by them. And the Premier League game before Brentford was Arsenal, and we got beaten by them. So still, there's no evidence of us winning 3 Premier League games on the bounce. Now, the last time that we won 3 Premier League games on the bounce was December 2023. And that was the 23-24 season where we finished 5th. And what do you know? There was 1 week between each of those games. It was over the Christmas period. And yeah, there was even 8 days between Forest away and Everton at home. But we had no European football that season. So you can clearly start to see a trend emerging here. And if we play that back even further to October 2023, that is the last time that we had a run of games that we've been able to win and we had no European football. That was the first 10 games of Ange's reign at Spurs, and we all know that went downhill from there. But the point I'm making, I guess, is that it's very, very clear to see by the form that we're in and the state of the squad, we do not have the squad to compete on all fronts right now, which is what the board and it's what ENIC are demanding, but without providing the support for the team, which is going to prevent injuries. Now, look, we can go back even further than this, right? Because in the 21-22 season that we finished 4th, when we also didn't have European football, yeah, that's right. Is that right? Yeah, that was under Conte. So we won 3 games on the bounce against Arsenal, against Burnley and against Norwich. So we have to go all the way back to May 2022 before Ange to see that we also won 3 on the bounce and we didn't have European football. So there is a very, very clear trend in recent times of what is going on here, because there was a time in Spurs history, recent history, that we were able to compete across all fronts. And Conte was the guy who allowed us to finish maybe a little bit higher in the table, but obviously we know there was a relationship breakdown and we didn't have European football then. And the seasons before that, we were in the old stadium. So there is definitely a change of atmosphere that has happened, because we haven't had a situation where we've had 60,000 people inside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium that has been successfully competing across all fronts. And what that has led to is a disconnect between the fans, between the players and the club. And this is really clear to see. I look, if you guys out there, if you have any evidence to suggest otherwise, that, you know, what I'm saying is not true, then please share your opinions, share your thoughts. But the way that I'm looking at this is, okay, how do we fix this problem? Is the manager, sacking the manager, actually going to solve this problem of form that we have? Because you have a remit to get into Europe, you have a remit to keep getting into Europe consistently, to compete in the Carabao Cup, to compete in the FA Cup, and the evidence clearly shows us that we do not have the squad depth to do that. We are sitting amongst those mid-teams in the table. We are, okay, look, Newcastle is not sitting mid-table, which is exactly my point. It's exactly my point. Newcastle are not sitting mid-table. Oh, they are. They jumped up. Oh, yeah, because they drew against Wolves, didn't they? But anyway, Newcastle are sitting 8th. Okay, so that proves, whichever way you spin it. Yeah, okay, so they're sitting mid-table. But they have 2 games. So Crystal Palace, they've dropped off a bit. So what is true is that, look at Nottingham Forest. It's very hard to compete across all fronts when you don't have the squad. Now, this is down to a lack of... It's not down to a lack of squad planning. What it's down to is a lack of conviction with the manager and the lack of confidence in the manager and the inability to support the manager by bringing in players that are going to suit their style and their system. Because for the past 3-4 years, going back to Conte, before Ange, going back to Conte, we've had this revolving door. And obviously in that time, we've also lost Kane and Son. So you can start to see the accumulation of issues that have come about because we haven't been replacing those players, compounded by the fact that we have European football. So it's a very... Nothing, as I said, nothing happens suddenly. Nothing happens in isolation. Everything is connected. And this is what leads us on to the injuries. Because we all know that being in European football last year was the straw that broke the camel's back. Because there was a period last year where we were competing and Andrew was really pushing us. Andrew was pushing us forward. He was like trying to like break through that... physicality that we're lacking because we don't have that depth. And that then led us to have a series of injuries, and we have not been able to recover since. That is the truth. We have not been able to recover since. And the fans became divided when that happened. We had this polarization of the fan base. On the one hand, saying, oh, it's amazing we're competing in Europe. On other fans being like, the Premier League is a disgrace, Ange needs to get sacked. And from that point forward, the injuries came, the polarisation of the fans came. And I can tell you, as someone who's in the stadium last season, Champions League games had a completely different atmosphere. And you could see that in my last video last night, or the vlog that I did at Dortmund the other day, last night. Oh my God, what am I saying? But last night you could see the difference in the atmosphere. I've given you guys, 3 match day vlogs now. You can see, you can hear the difference between the cup game against Villa, the Premier League game against West Ham, and the Champions League game against Dortmund. You can see it. You can hear it. I don't need to tell you. So that leads me to the question to ask, Why is that happening? And is that actually having a bigger impact on the players than we think it is? Because as far as I'm concerned, we can keep calling for the manager's head. You might not like the style, but when we look a bit deeper, is this a case of a revolving door of injuries, of a situation where we are not built to have capacity across our whole squad to play twice a week? And this is the point that I've been making when I've been talking about backing the manager. And yes, hold it, because I don't know if Frank's the guy, but I need more evidence to suggest it. I need more evidence to suggest it either way. And what I need to see is the board talking about transfers. Now, there's many channels out there telling you about transfers. If you want to hear all that stuff, for now, I'm going to hold off on those conversations because it's all paper talk until it actually happens. And sometimes we get all excited. We saw what happened with Morgan Gibbs-White. I don't want to bore you to death with talking about transfers that aren't going to happen because it's not relevant. They don't play for us, right? They don't play for us yet. So it's kind of an irrelevant conversation. But yeah, we have had a lot of injuries. At one point last year, I think we had like 16 injuries or something crazy. At the moment, we have something like 14 injuries. And you could see that. You could see that in the game yesterday because we didn't have the squad rotation. Last year at Elfsborg, we were playing Austin in goal. We had Lancashire and Moore who played that game. And we had Ajayi who came on and scored. So there was a period last year. Yes, Elfsborg were easier to beat than Dortmund. But Dortmund were on a massive run and we just beat them. So why is it that we are winning Champions League games and off the back of that, not winning games in the Premier League? And further to that, not winning games in the Premier League that are, I would say, at home, but I don't think it matters if it's home or away. We can't get a string together when we have that midweek game, and it's a real problem. It's costing us in the league, and it's causing the fans to lose their heads, to get all heightened in emotion and start taking it out on the manager, which is compounding the effect of the fragmentation of this club, because people are not seeing the bigger picture. They're not getting behind the manager. And I think a big problem of that is because the board haven't come out and said it. And I do think if the board came out and said, we're backing the manager, we're buying players, be patient with us, I think the fans might have a little bit of grace. But because they're not saying that, because the board are not showing their hand, because they're not backing the manager openly, we are getting this backlash from the fans, backlash from the pundits, which is this vicious, it's not even a cycle, it's a spiral of decline. That's what it is. It is a spiral of decline. And if we're not careful, if we keep treating our players like this, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And so I do think that part of it is the squad rotation, buying more players in the squad so that we can have these positions. And when I say buy more players, I mean better planning. If you want to play in Europe and you can only have a team of 25, you need homegrown players, and we need to plan better for that eventuality. Is Lancashire and Moore, are they the guys that are going to step up? I don't know. They're both out on loan. They're both doing okay, but they're getting their game time this year. But if we're thinking about the future and next year and where's this going to take us, regardless whether Frank's in the hot seat or not, we need to be planning for these homegrown players to come in and to provide that rotation for us. Because in situations like yesterday and the current situation with the injuries, we need to have more players available to support the squad. Because when you're playing in multiple competitions, you need to have the squad depth. We've seen how City built up. We've seen how Arsenal built up. We're seeing right now what has happened with Liverpool because they made so many changes at the beginning of the season, and that is costing them because they haven't built up their physical fitness. The same thing is happening to them in the Premier League at the moment. And I know some of you right now are shouting at your screens. You're like, Sarah, but it's West Ham. Can't believe it. Dr. Tottenham, we lost against West Ham. Well, to give you another perspective on this, the fixtures last weekend were surprising because Liverpool drew against Burnley. Arsenal dropped points to Forest. Who would have thought that? Who would have thought that? United go and beat City. And guess what? United haven't got a midweek game. Who would have thought that? So last weekend was a very, very peculiar weekend. Across the board, you are seeing more draws against the Premier League than ever before this season. I've spoken about that. You're seeing more set piece goals coming into play. So the game has changed. The quality of players has gone down. The competitiveness across all competitions has gone up because there are more games to be played as well. We have to factor that in. Right, the Champions League wasn't a league stage a couple of seasons ago. So all of this plays into the context of why are Spurs not performing across all fronts and why is it costing us in the Premier League. And something crazy. So I'm in a group which is a last man standing group. It's a little bit of fun. But basically, everyone puts a tenner into the pot, and every week you choose your favourite team to which you're backing to win that round, that week, the game week. And the funny thing is that last weekend they had 117 people into this pot, and there are four people left after round one. So 113 players in this little league that we've got going on, they got knocked out last weekend because of their predictions. And the people that have progressed through this little game, these four people, they chose Chelsea, United and Leeds. So whoever before that game backed United to beat City is crazy. You know, people didn't necessarily back Chelsea to win either. And whoever chose Leeds just went rogue. So it's crazy. And for more context, the first run of that happened earlier in the season, it got to 15 rounds. So 15 rounds of people choosing. I think the final two were in it for about 5 game weeks. But it just goes to show you that you cannot predict the Premier League. You can't predict what's going to happen. Sometimes a team shows up. Sometimes they don't. And we can talk about tactics and things, but the problem is when we have a situation where we have so many injuries, Frank doesn't have the selection to choose from to play his best team. And as I said in my last video, Udogie is one of our best players. Bergvall, one of our best players. Gray, when he's on a good day, he's one of our better players. But unfortunately, all of those players have been out at some point this season. And so it just emphasises even more. Now, another point that I want to make, and I said I was going to bring this back to Solanke in my last video. So Solanke, interestingly, when he came into or when he started playing under Frank, what's interesting is I said that he wasn't in favour to start a lot of games. Where is he? Bear with me. Where is he? Solanke. Because I want to give you accurate information. And I realise I'm fumbling my words a little bit, but this is new to me, so bear with me. Right, so Solanke. Now, when Frank came in, obviously Solanke played the United game, then he played against Brighton off the back of the parade and everything else last year. He played a friendly against Reading, and he came on for 17 minutes against PSG. Now, what's interesting is Frank came in, he played him in that friendly, he played him for less than 20 minutes against PSG, he played him less than 20 minutes against Burnley, he played 12 minutes against City, and that was the last time he played. So I'm wondering whether he was already carrying an injury before that, because don't forget, when Solanke first got injured, it was only supposed to be a temporary thing, and he's been out for 5-6 months. The fact that he played yesterday for 70 minutes, we forget that he's been out of the game for 5 months, and even before then, the statistics show us that he probably, most likely, was carrying something, which might explain why he wasn't completely on form at the beginning of the season. Now, to back this up, you can see that Frank is trying his best to integrate players back into the squad where he can. Because against Villa, he played him for 7 minutes. Against West Ham, he played him for 28. And yesterday, he played 70. So I'm expecting him to play a full 90 for the first time since Bilbao in the next game against Burnley. And I think this is very important for context because it does show that Frank is aware of the rotation. Unfortunately, for a situation like Udogie, he didn't have the choice. If he would have had a left winger, and I'm sure in an ideal scenario, he would have played Tell there if Tell was in the squad. But no one could have foreseen Udogie getting injured. And so there's so many things when you piece it all together in the bigger picture of things of why is this happening, right? The unfortunately at the moment the situation is that we're in is that we can't get ahead of ourselves. We can't get ahead of this injury crisis because of the team selection, because we lack the planning of the homegrown players, because we are playing across 2 competitions and we clearly don't have the depth to be playing in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. It's evident. It's evident of that. Last season was the furthest we got to proving that that was possible, and Europa League is an easier competition than Champions League. So, last year we finished 17th and this year we're out the cups. We progressed quite far in the cups last year and we finished 17th. So look, all of this to say, because this has been quite a long video, I think you guys can see the point that I'm making. I hope that you can see the point that I'm making. I don't think Frank last night plays Udogie for a full 90 minutes if we have 10 on the pitch. And for those of you saying, well, he shouldn't have swapped Solanke out for Tell, Solanke is a better striker than Mawani. He's a better striker. We established that in the last video in the match analysis. And so when you're in this kind of situation where you have a lot of injuries, and look, it's the same thing with our midfield. It's the same thing. You've got Paulinho, you've got Bentancur. They're both injured. Gallagher comes in. Gray had a knock last game. Bergvall gets injured. It's a constant thing. And I'm telling you now, it's only a matter of time. It is only a matter of time before Gallagher gets injured. And you can come back to this video and write it here, Sarah, you were right when that happens. Because it's going to happen. Because when we get progressed through this stage of the Europa League, he's going to be named in our squad. Because Bentancur or Paulinho, one of them is probably going to be dropped. I don't know how long everyone's out for. I can't remember what Bentancur's, how many weeks or months it was that Bentancur's out. But anyway, I think you guys get the point that I'm making. And obviously we know that Maddison's got a long-term injury. And Kulu has got a long-term injury. And unfortunately, it doesn't sound from the murmurs that Kulu's going to be back anytime soon. We've got Kudus, who is out injured. So it's a very, very tricky situation for Frank to manage. And I haven't even spoken about the actual tactics in this game. But I guess when you're in a situation where your form is so off, where you can't create consistent results, where you have a constant injury crisis, it's very challenging to compete across all fronts. And the harder league of the 2 that we're in at the moment is the Premier League. It's more physical, it's more demanding, it requires more from the players. And we come out fighting in the first half of games, but we seem to drop off in the second half where we lack the squad rotation. Do you see the pattern? Do you see the pattern? Because everything in life is cyclical. Everything in life is cyclical. Everything in life is duality. The sun, the moon, the light, the dark. You get it. There is this duality that happens. And so you have this situation where you're so polarized on both fronts. I haven't even spoken to you guys about the fan situation. So I'm going to very quickly do that. This is going to be a longer video, but I hope this is interesting. Because my perspective is that the reason why we are seeing the Premier League games be the ones to drop off, not only because of the higher pressure situations, but I do believe, and this is proven by the fact that we have a better record away than we do at home. We have not won at home. It is crazy, okay? We have a problem playing at home in the Premier League. And the reason for that is the fans. Come for me in the comments. But it's true. We have a problem with our fan base. And I pointed this out in our last video because the Champions League European games last year, the atmosphere was different. And you know what's even more interesting is our reputation in European football hangs on us getting to that final in 2019. There, I said it. But it's true because European teams, they look at us, they think Tottenham Hotspur, they got to the Champions League final. They won European football last year. They're a force to be reckoned with. They don't know what's going on inside our stadium. They don't know as well as the Premier League do about what's going on inside our club. And they look at England, they look at our team very differently. They come to our ground, which is one of the best in Europe, and they go, oh my goodness, and they feel the crowd because the crowd are behind the team on European games. They are. And so what happens is they come in, they get intimidated. We start off on the front foot, and that is how we have won 25 games at home on the bounce in European football. Come at me with different opinions and ideas. But sometimes your reputation precedes you. And when a European team comes in, even a team like Dortmund, who after the game, by the way, everyone's saying Dortmund aren't that good, even though they've been undefeated this entire season, that is why they come in and they got intimidated last night. That atmosphere was part and parcel of the reason why we were able to get it over the line and keep a clean sheet. It is, in my opinion, because that is opinion. But yeah, I think the challenging situation that we've got is we have got people paying high ticket prices for Premier League games who are either on the silver or the gold cup scheme as season ticket holders, who are so angry at the Premier League form, they're not going to the Champions League and European League games. They weren't there. And I can tell you that as a very small sample size of the 11 that I go with, last night there was only 5 of us. So 50%. So, I mean, if we were to extrapolate that out, I mean, you can't say that 50% of the stadium aren't the same. But there is a very strong case to suggest that one of the reasons why this is happening is because you're getting different people in the seats. You're getting a different type of supporter. You're getting a different type of fan who is not sick and tired, because for them, they are grateful to go and see a game. They're grateful to be part of an experience of the Champions League because they are amazing nights. They are. The songs before them, coming out to the music, there's a different feel. When we play West Ham, we're all thinking in the back of our minds, are we going to win this? We go into Champions League, different mindset. And I do think that this is having an impact on our home form specifically. We're not going away and winning every single game. But as Frank said, he's managing expectations. You don't expect to win every single away game. You're going to have moments where you drop off in games. You're not going to be in 100% possession all the time. You're not going to be on the front foot 100% of the time. Some people are saying, yesterday, the second half, we came out and we didn't play very well. No, we sat back, we absorbed that pressure. You're never going to have a full 90 minutes when you're playing on the front foot. That is the beauty of football. You've got an opponent, right? If it wasn't challenging, it wouldn't be fun to watch, right? It's why it's one of the best sports. It's why it's a low scoring sport when you think about it, because games can be very tight. It can take one moment to change an entire game. So I think all of this to say, I think one thing that is evident is that the board is listening in terms of the ticket prices, because as I said in the last video, they're looking at bringing in a student concession, whether it's going to be young professionals, which is sometimes they do 24 or 22 and below get a concession or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see whether that does come into place next season, because I do think that that's going to change again the atmosphere inside the stadium. You've got people that, I can see you guys in the comments, who have been going to Spurs all of your lives for like 60, 70 years, and a lot of people have become jaded about the situation. They are still thinking about the Spurs of the past in those 2010 years, 2011 years, you know, in the Redknapp era where we had that solid squad, you know, when we had our Bales and our Dele Allis and our Harry Kanes. When we look back, you know, that was a different era. It was a different season at Spurs. And so, yeah, suffice to say, I'm going to try and get this into 45 minutes. So I think that all of this to say, there is a lot of different stuff going on behind the scenes, and we need to be patient. We need to have time. Is Frank the guy? I don't know. But you know what? After yesterday, I'm prepared to see it out and see what the board do. And this was my point about change for Spurs, because you're protesting before anything's allowed to happen. Do you know what? If we don't buy anyone, yeah, I would be really annoyed at the board. But at the moment, we haven't bought anyone. So you're kind of in this limbo. So that doesn't help the situation. It's turning fans against each other more than they already were. Anyway, I love you all dearly. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. There's probably some more stuff that I want to jabber about, but we can do that in the next video. So thanks for sticking with me. I hope you found this interesting. Let me know your thoughts. Is there any validity to this? Do you guys see what I'm seeing? Do you think this is all nonsense and you just think that we should be flying it out the park every single game? Is it an unreasonable thing to suggest that we need better squad rotation to compete across all fronts? Do you think that the fans are causing an influence on the pitch? What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear, and so would everyone else who's part of this Spurs family. So I'll see you all in the next one.